The city never slept. Neon lights sputtered and flickered against rain-slicked streets, a heartbeat of color in the endless darkness. Steam rose from grates, curling like fingers searching for something unseen, and the scent of wet asphalt mixed with gasoline, smoke, and distant exhaust. Somewhere beneath the skyline, power whispered, and danger moved quietly but deliberately. Every corner hid a secret. Every shadow had a story. Luca Bellini crouched low in a narrow alley, pressed against cold brick. Heart hammering, he measured the rhythm of his own breath against the pulse of the city. Every footstep above him sounded amplified, echoing like a gunshot in the quiet chaos. He waited. Somewhere, a presence moved with intent, a predator who didn't stumble, didn't falter, didn't make mistakes. The doors creaked. A soft shuffle of boots. A whisper of steel against leather. Then the metallic click of a weapon raised. Not by Luca, not yet. From somewhere deep in the storm, calm, controlled, unshakable, a voice cut through the patter of rain and the distant hum of traffic. "Owe me once, you will pay with everything." Steel flashed. Chaos erupted. The rain became a crimson blur as the world narrowed to the pulse of survival. In that instant, one thought froze Luca's breath. He was in the Don's world now. There was no turning back. Luca Bellini hadn't been born into power. Every favor he had claimed, every opportunity he had carved, every scrap of survival, had been owed to someone stronger, sharper, someone who measured loyalty like currency. By day, he merged with the faceless crowd of Manhattan, walking past bankers, commuters, and delivery men. By night, he slipped into smoke-filled bars, observing, listening, learning, calculating. His apartment smelled of stale coffee and dampness from rain that crept through cracked windows. A photograph leaned against a chipped mug. His father, gone before Luca could say goodbye, and a mother whose words lingered. Never trust what you cannot see. Never owe what you cannot repay. Secrets had become his armor. Every alleyway mapped, every whisper cataloged, every danger remembered. Yet even with all his careful calculations, he hadn't anticipated tonight. The storm, the gunfire, the Don's influence stretching across the city like a dark tide. Tonight, every step, every decision, every ounce of caution would matter. Then he saw him. Vincenzo, the Godfather. Moretti stepped from the shadows, as if darkness itself bent around him. The wet light of neon traced the edge of his tailored coat, highlighting the calm menace in his posture. Heads turned, shoulders stiffened, eyes hardened by violence and betrayal averted in instinctual deference. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone rearranged the air, bending it to his will. Dark eyes, sharper than the finest blade, scanned the space. They missed nothing. The subtle twitch of a shoulder, the flicker of hesitation, the way a man's fingers brushed against a concealed weapon. Every gesture, every tilt of the chin, spoke of wars survived, betrayals endured, assassins outmaneuvered. Legends clung to him like shadows. Respect and fear were interchangeable in his world. For Luca, standing just out of reach, the contrast was suffocating. One man had lived in shadows, surviving by calculation. The other owned the darkness. Every instinct screamed, keep your head down, move carefully. And yet, some invisible pull, fate, gravity, inevitability, kept him there, inches from the storm of Vincenzo Moretti. The Don's gaze finally fell on Luca, slow, deliberate, measured. Do you understand what it means to owe me, Luca? One debt, one promise, and everything else belongs to me. Even in that single sentence, the weight of inevitability pressed down, heavier than the rain on his shoulders. This was more than fear, more than respect. The Don's presence extended into the very fabric of the city, seeping into the streets, the shadows, the whispers between men who thought themselves untouchable. Across the room, Luca cataloged the subtle signals of threat, a twitch too long in the corner, a glance lingering at the wrong man, the slight scrape of a cuff revealing a tattoo, a dagger and 3 stars. A phone buzzed softly against polished wood, its screen illuminating details meant to remain hidden. Every motion of the Don was precise, almost imperceptible, yet every movement conveyed absolute authority. The room was a chessboard, and Luca realized he was both a piece and a player. Every gesture, every pause, every slight smile concealed meaning. Loyalty, betrayal, opportunity, all swirled beneath the calm surface. He felt it before he saw it. A single gunshot. Chaos ignited. Rain mixed with steel, blood, and smoke. The city outside roared, but inside, the storm had become personal. Luca Bellini's world had just narrowed to one immutable truth. In Vincenzo Moretti's domain, survival demanded more than instinct. It demanded action, courage, and the willingness to pay a price heavier than life itself. Luca ran before thinking. Rain-slicked concrete reflected the chaos above in fractured shards of neon, each puddle a distorted mirror of threat and movement. Every step was a gamble, every corner a potential ambush. The scent of wet asphalt mixed with gunpowder and smoke, heavy and sharp in his lungs. A gunman rounded a corner with lethal intent. Instinct took over. Luca grabbed a discarded bottle from the curb and hurled it with precision. The glass shattered violently against the wall, a spray of droplets and jagged shards scattering the light. The man flinched just long enough. Luca exploited it, sliding past, heart hammering, fingers brushing the heat of a raised gun barrel. The world narrowed to motion, sound, and survival. He reached a stairwell. His mind snapped through options in fractions of a second. Left or right? Right? The map in his head, memorized months ago, whispered the path to an emergency exit. Hidden, obscure, safe, maybe. Steps pounded above, deliberate, echoing with authority and intent. Luca vaulted down the stairs two at a time, pain flaring in his leg. Every joint and tendon screamed protest, but he ignored it. Survival was instinct, faster than thought. Each landing was a calculated risk, slipping, falling, being caught, but instinct carried him past. Through a narrow service tunnel, darkness pressed in, thick and suffocating. The metallic tang of rust and wet concrete filled the air. Every footstep echoed like a gunshot, bouncing back from the walls, alerting anyone nearby to his presence. Shadows danced, elongated by flickering fluorescent lights overhead. He pressed against a wall, listening, breathing, counting. The enemy's steps had slowed, a pause in the pursuit, but he knew better than to trust silence. Ahead, a metal grate barred his path. Locked, rusted, worn. Luca swung his boot with force. The metal screeched, groaning under the impact, but finally gave way. He shoved, wrenched, and the grate clanged free, clattering into the tunnel like an alarm. Freedom was almost within reach. Almost. Bullets struck metal near him, ricochets sending sparks dancing along the walls. He rolled low, every movement precise. Hands found leverage along the pipes, elbows snapping off corners, knees driving into the floor. He darted, slipped, and the world contracted into the rhythm of his pulse and the patter of rain seeping through cracks above. A narrow shaft of moonlight pierced the darkness ahead. Luca sprinted toward it, the distant echo of gunfire behind him. His breath came in ragged bursts, chest heaving, lungs burning. The night had become a predator itself, every shadow a threat, every echo a warning. From above, the dawn moved like a specter. Luca glimpsed him through the chaos, a figure of precision and lethal calm, eliminating threats with quiet, unerring efficiency. Each shot fired by Vincenzo Moretti was measured, purposeful. The chaos bent around him, forming a deadly rhythm. Luca realized something vital. He wasn't just surviving tonight. He was part of a larger plan, woven into the machinery of strategy, loyalty, and consequence. He slid behind a stack of crates, pressed his back to the wet metal, and scanned for movement. Rival gunmen circled like wolves, some taking long, measured shots, others closing in with blades and brute force. Luca calculated each possibility, every angle, every sound. His heart hammered, but his mind was sharper than ever. A forklift clanged in the distance, startling a pair of attackers who had cornered him in a narrow alcove. Luca seized the moment. With a roll, he vaulted into a shadowed corridor, arms pumping, legs propelling him faster than he thought possible. The concrete walls became a blur, the rhythm of his sprint matched by the pounding of rain above. Finally, he reached a ladder tucked against the wall, slick with moisture. Without hesitation, he grabbed it and ascended. Metal screamed against gloves, fingers numbed by cold and effort, but he climbed. Up, toward the faint glow of the street above, toward the promise of temporary safety. Each rung was a lifeline, each breath a gamble. From the rooftop, Luca paused for a heartbeat, crouched low, chest heaving. Below, the Don's men continued the fight, bullets striking crates and steel like percussion in a deadly symphony. Luca's pulse synced with the rhythm of battle, a silent partner in the orchestration of survival. He was no longer just a man fleeing. He was an instrument in a deadly, calculated performance. The city stretched around him, a sprawling labyrinth of danger and opportunity. Rain pattered against his jacket, soaked through his hair, but he didn't notice. He had survived the first stage, but the night was far from over. The shadows ahead held more than threats. They held choices, consequences, and the realization that in Vincenzo Moretti's world, even escape was a strategy, every step a test, every breath a debt waiting to be collected. The safe house was quiet, so quiet it felt almost unnatural. 3 floors above a shuttered pawn shop, the building seemed abandoned to anyone passing by, its windows dark, its presence unremarkable. Inside, the walls absorbed the sound, holding the echoes of rain and chaos from the streets below. Luca closed the door behind him, the lock clicking into place. For a single, precious moment, it was as if he could finally breathe. But the weight of the night pressed down immediately, heavy as lead. Survival was only temporary. Dim light from a single lamp spilled over the wooden table, casting jagged shadows that danced across scattered papers and a coffee cup long since gone cold. The air carried the scent of old books, mildew, and the faint, bitter tang of burnt dust from the radiator. Luca leaned against the wall, shoulder pressed to plaster, chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. The adrenaline that had driven him through alleyways, stairwells, and tunnels began to ebb, replaced by the ache of muscles screaming in protest and the gnawing clarity of danger. Fear, relief, confusion. They tangled together, inseparable. He reached up and wiped blood from a cut above his eyebrow. Staring down at his hands, smeared with grime and rainwater, he barely recognized himself. His eyes drifted to a photograph on the shelf, a frozen fragment of a softer world. His mother, holding him as a child, her eyes warm and gentle, her smile patient and full of unspoken caution. A life removed from bullets, betrayals, and debts measured in blood and fear. Luca's chest tightened. That world felt impossibly far away, like a dream slipping through his fingers. His gaze wandered to a drawer tucked beneath the lamp. The wood resisted his pull, swollen with years of humidity. Finally, it scraped open with a groan, revealing a thick folder sealed with black tape. Its weight was tangible, heavy with the promise of revelation. Luca's fingers hesitated over it, as though touching it might drag him deeper into the shadows he had spent years skirting. Inside were documents both crisp and yellowed, maps of old neighborhoods marked with red circles, receipts for cash drops, surveillance photos of men moving through streets where they shouldn't have been. And then his name. Clear, targeted, underlined by circumstance, inherited debts, and old grudges. A cold thought brushed against him. This wasn't just about him. It never had been. The Bellini name had been a pawn long before he ever walked these streets. His father's absence, his family's struggles, the very air he had breathed, it had all been part of a larger game, a puzzle whose pieces had been in motion decades before he understood. "How long have I been playing someone else's game?" he whispered, the words nearly swallowed by the silence. The echo of the question seemed to cling to the corners of the room, pressing against the walls, folding into the shadows. Then a knock. Soft, deliberate. 2 slow taps, almost polite in its timing. Luca froze. The sound wasn't random. It was a code. Someone was watching. Someone knew the rules. His pulse quickened, fingers tightening around the folder. Before he could react further, the Don's shadow appeared in the doorway. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Presence alone filled the room, stretching into every corner, compressing the air. Not loud, not threatening, just certain. Authority that required no sound, no plea, no justification. The pact was forming, unspoken, unmistakable. Luca felt the weight of its implications settle over him like a second skin. Protection came at a price. Surrendering fragments of independence was non-negotiable. Loyalty demanded stepping into wars with no clean exits. Partnership required carrying burdens older than life itself, debts written in invisible ink across generations. The Don's eyes scanned him, calm and measured. A man who had survived assassins, betrayals, and wars in silence, yet whose every movement communicated understanding, expectation, and control. Luca understood without a word. Stepping away now would not only be impossible, it would be a death sentence. The choice was his, but not truly. He let the folder fall onto the table. The sound of it striking would echoing like a heartbeat. The documents lay open, secrets waiting. He swallowed hard, tasting metal on his tongue from the remnants of fear and blood, and straightened his back. This was the threshold, and in that quiet room, with the storm outside still drumming against the windows, Luca realized the truth. He had survived the night, but the real game, the one that demanded cunning, courage, and the constant weighing of life and death, was only just beginning. Every choice from here would ripple. Every decision would echo, and the world outside this sanctuary would not wait. He stepped forward toward the map, toward the path written in black tape and ink. His hand hovered over a line of surveillance photos. Each image, each address, each name marked the terrain he would now navigate. Danger was inevitable. Betrayal probable. But retreat? That was no longer an option. The city below hummed, indifferent to the violence it nurtured. Luca's heartbeat matched the rhythm of the night, steadying, sharpening, focusing. In this sanctuary, brief though it might be, he prepared. The Bellini name had been a shadow for too long. Now, under the Don's gaze, that shadow would step into the light, weaponized by loyalty, sharpened by survival, and tempered in the fires of a world that never forgave mistakes. And somewhere in the quiet, behind every creak and every sigh of settling walls, a silent understanding passed between man and boy, Don and protege, debt and repayment. The path forward would be treacherous, but Luca Bellini had no choice but to walk it. The night had a will of its own. Clouds swallowed the moon whole, smothering even the faintest silver light. The docks lay in darkness, so thick it seemed to swallow sound. Every shadow a potential assassin, every creaking plank a whispered threat. The only movement came from the low hum of engines. 3 black sedans sliding silently across slick asphalt, headlights off, doors locked tight, men inside ready for what the night had chosen to unleash. Luca Bellini sat in the second car, shoulder pressed to the cold metal, hands clenched over the edge of the seat, eyes fixed on the fleeting shapes of containers and cranes passing by. His pulse had steadied, but it was sharp, alive, aware. Every instinct in him screamed vigilance. Every muscle coiled for action. He knew what waited outside, waiting for a single misstep. Rival families whispered behind closed doors that the Don had grown soft, that age or complacency had dulled his edge. Federal agents scrawled confident notes, believing their badges and bureaucracy could touch the untouchable. Inside the organization, there were men who had decided, carefully, quietly, that tonight would be the night to end him, to take the crown while the Don's eyes were elsewhere. All of them were wrong. A distant roar split the silence. A truck exploding at the far end of the yard. Flames tore into the night sky. A false sunrise of destruction, painting the shipping containers orange and red, shadows flickering like demons dancing across metal. The blast hit hard, rattling the convoy, shoving Luca back against the seat. Heat kissed his face through the cracked window, smoke curling into the air, and the acrid scent of gunpowder hit his nose. From the chaos, men poured out, rival gunmen, precision-trained and vicious, weapons raised, eyes wild with intent. But chaos alone was never enough. The Don's world moved differently. Beneath the carnage was rhythm. Beneath the gunfire was calculation. Every step of Luca's heart, every movement of his limbs had been trained in observation. He had watched, memorized, learned the silent language of the Don's crew. The battle might look like chaos, but it was structure, strategy, and deadly choreography. Luca leapt from the car, feet splashing and rainwater pooling across the asphalt. He sprinted between crates, elbows tucked, body low, breathing even. His eyes cataloged the yard, gunmen advancing, their angles, their distances, their positions in a silent matrix of threat and opportunity. A man rounded a stack of containers, shotgun raised. Luca pivoted, dropped to the side, grabbed a discarded pipe from the ground, swung it with precise force. The man staggered, fell into a puddle, sputtering. Another threat rose on his left. Luca twisted, elbow striking, shoulder driving forward. Fast, efficient, brutal, observant. Every movement counted. Every second could mean survival or death. Above, on a crane that loomed like a skeleton against the stormy sky, a sniper shifted, silhouette black against the flames, the barrel pivoting toward the dawn. Luca's vision narrowed, heart racing, lungs tight. He calculated trajectory, distance, wind, timing. And then he moved, sprinting toward the crane ladder, hands gripping the cold metal, feet finding purchase despite the slick surface. Bullets ricocheted around him, pinging off steel, tearing into crates, cutting off escape paths. He climbed, breath ripping from his lungs, muscles screaming with exertion. Inch by inch, he closed on the sniper, timing each movement with instinct honed in alleys, stairwells, and safe houses. The sniper pivoted just enough to expose an opening. Luca struck, slamming into him, forcing the rifle clattering across the platform. They struggled, a violent dance 30 feet above the firestorm of chaos below. Knife drawn, resistance met, balance lost, Luca countered, shoved. The sniper disappeared into darkness, swallowed by night and fire. Below, the dawn moved like a ghost of purpose. Calm, precise, executing lethal maneuvers with a presence that reshaped the battlefield. One shot, another, men neutralized before they fully registered danger. Luca caught the dawn's gaze for a single, fleeting moment. Not gratitude, not praise, acknowledgement. A nod that carried weight beyond words. He had survived. He had acted. He had proven instinct and loyalty mattered. But the night was relentless. Reinforcements streamed in from every direction. Rival crews, shadowy figures emerging from shipping containers, federal spotlights sweeping across the yard, illuminating fleeting targets and forcing new decisions in fractions of seconds. The smell of gunpowder thickened, mingled with rain, smoke, and steel. Every shadow held threat. Every figure could be friend or foe. Luca moved with quiet efficiency, slipping from cover to cover, neutralizing threats only when necessary, observing patterns, cataloging positions. Each decision carried consequence. A wrong move here, a hesitation there, and lives would end, plans unravel, trust shatter. Rival families whisper behind closed doors that the dawn had grown soft, that age or complacency had dulled his edge. Federal agents scrawled confident notes, believing their badges and bureaucracy could touch the untouchable. Inside the organization, there were men who had decided, carefully, quietly, that tonight would be the night to end him, to take the crown while the dawn's eyes were elsewhere. All of them were wrong. A distant roar split the silence, a truck exploding at the far end of the yard. Flames tore into the night sky, a false sunrise of destruction, painting the shipping containers orange and red, shadows flickering like demons dancing across metal. The blast hit hard, rattling the convoy, shoving Luca back against the seat. Heat kissed his face through the cracked window, smoke curling into the air, and the acrid scent of gunpowder hit his nose. From the chaos, men poured out, rival gunmen, precision-trained and vicious, weapons raised, eyes wild with intent. But chaos alone was never enough. The dawn's world moved differently. Beneath the carnage was rhythm. Beneath the gunfire was calculation. Every step of Luca's heart, every movement of his limbs had been trained in observation. He had watched, memorized, learned the silent language of the dawn's crew. The battle might look like chaos, but it was structure, strategy, and deadly choreography. Luca leapt from the car, feet splashing and rainwater pooling across the asphalt. He sprinted between crates, elbows tucked, body low, breathing even. His eyes cataloged the yard, gunmen advancing, their angles, their distances, their positions in a silent matrix of threat and opportunity. A man rounded a stack of containers, shotgun raised. Luca pivoted, dropped to the side, grabbed a discarded pipe from the ground, swung it with precise force. The man staggered, fell into a puddle, sputtering. Another threat rose on his left. Luca twisted, elbow striking, shoulder driving forward. Fast, efficient, brutal, observant. Every movement counted. Every second could mean survival or death. Above, on a crane that loomed like a skeleton against the stormy sky, a sniper shifted. Silhouette black against the flames, the barrel pivoting toward the dawn. Luca's vision narrowed. Heart racing, lungs tight. He calculated trajectory, distance, wind, timing. And then he moved, sprinting toward the crane ladder, hands gripping the cold metal, feet finding purchase despite the slick surface. Bullets ricocheted around him, pinging off steel, tearing into crates, cutting off escape paths. He climbed, breath ripping from his lungs, muscles screaming with exertion. Inch by inch, he closed on the sniper, timing each movement with instinct honed in alleys, stairwells, and safe houses. The sniper pivoted, just enough to expose an opening. Luca struck, slamming into him, forcing the rifle clattering across the platform. They struggled, a violent dance 30 feet above the firestorm of chaos below. Knife drawn, resistance met, balance lost, Luca countered, shoved. The sniper disappeared into darkness, swallowed by night and fire. Below, the dawn moved like a ghost of purpose. Calm, precise, executing lethal maneuvers with a presence that reshaped the battlefield. One shot, another, men neutralized before they fully registered danger. Luca caught the dawn's gaze for a single, fleeting moment. Not gratitude, not praise, acknowledgement, a nod that carried weight beyond words. He had survived, he had acted, he had proven instinct and loyalty mattered. But the night was relentless. Reinforcements streamed in from every direction. Rival crews, shadowy figures emerging from shipping containers, federal spotlights sweeping across the yard, illuminating fleeting targets and forcing new decisions in fractions of seconds. The smell of gunpowder thickened, mingled with rain, smoke, and steel. Every shadow held threat. Every figure could be friend or foe. Luca moved with quiet efficiency, slipping from cover to cover, neutralizing threats only when necessary, observing patterns, cataloging positions. Each decision carried consequence. A wrong move here, a hesitation there, and lives would end, plans unravel, trust shatter. Every reinforcer, every hidden gun, every traitor waiting for the perfect moment tested the fragile bond he now had with the Dawn. The rhythm of the fight was relentless. Waves of assault met the Dawn strategy. Men fell, others advanced. Bullets tore through metal and wood. Glass shattered, a cacophony that could have swallowed an untrained soul whole. And yet Luca moved through it, calculated, breathing controlled, his mind a sharp machine, observing, acting, surviving. By the time the storm subsided, when smoke curled lazily across the containers, when the fire burned down to smoldering embers, and the docks once again held silence, the Dawn's convoy had emerged victorious, precise, almost untouchable. Every enemy neutralized, every angle secured, every betrayal accounted for. Luca finally exhaled, but even as he did, understanding pressed down, this wasn't safety. It wasn't comfort. It was survival until the next threat, until the next fire, until the next night someone chose to challenge the Dawn, and by extension, challenge him. Protection was a weapon. Loyalty was a test. And every choice from now on would be measured, recorded, and judged. Somewhere in the darkness, new players were already moving, plotting. Luca's eyes scanned the horizon. Every shadow was alive, every alley a potential death trap, and the weight of the Dawn's world settled fully on his shoulders. To survive, to act, to obey, but also to understand, anticipate, and endure. Because in the Dawn's world, survival was only temporary, and the cost of every breath could be paid in blood. The docks fell silent again, but the silence was heavy, thick with smoke, gunpowder, and the stench of wet asphalt. Flames had burned down to smoldering embers, casting shadows that danced across overturned crates and twisted metal. Bodies, both friend and foe, were strewn across the yard, were already dragged away, leaving only echoes behind. The air felt charged, waiting for something more, as if the night itself hadn't yet released its claim on the survivors. Luca leaned against a shipping container, knees trembling, jacket torn, hands smeared with blood that wasn't entirely his own. He blinked through the haze, every sound magnified. The drip of water from a torn tarp, the distant wail of a siren, the soft hiss of embers. He had survived, but survival had left a residue, a sticky weight pressing into his chest. Every instinct screamed. The fight was over, but the war was just beginning. The dawn emerged from the darkness, stepping over debris with a measured calm. No haste, no panique, just presence, the kind that reshaped a battlefield without a single word. Luca caught his gaze, fleeting but intense, and saw the acknowledgement there. Not praise, not anger, just recognition of action, instinct and obedience. You stayed in the open. The Don's voice came, low, deliberate, cutting through the haze. You could have died, but you acted. That counts. In my world, that counts. Luca swallowed. The words weren't comfort. They were a warning, a decree, a reminder of how fragile the line between life and death had become. I couldn't just watch, Luca replied, voice hoarse. Good, the Don said. Not approval, not satisfaction, just certainty. Tomorrow, the Vulovs will feel this, and they will know we are ready. They'll strike back, they always do. And you'll be ready too, or you'll be gone. The weight of responsibility pressed down on Luca. Protection wasn't a gift, it was a contract with invisible chains. Loyalty wasn't a virtue, it was currency measured in blood, trust, and calculated risk. And every choice from now on could tip the scales, costing life or preserving it. The survivors of the convoy moved methodically, checking positions, tending wounds, securing the perimeter. The storm's aftertaste lingered in the air, and the faint drip of rain against steel sounded almost like a countdown. Luca followed, each step deliberate, each glance cataloging allies, enemies, and the unknown. Inside the safe house later, the world felt smaller, yet heavier. Dim light traced the edges of old furniture, shadows pooling in corners. Papers lay scattered. Maps, surveillance photos, reports on rival families, cryptic notes that whispered secrets Luca was only beginning to understand. He picked up a folder, black tape sealing it shut. His name, marked, targeted, reminded him of debts he hadn't chosen but now owned. How long have I been playing someone else's game? He muttered, the weight of decades pressing on him. A knock on the door startled him. Soft, deliberate. A code. Someone watching. Someone testing. Luca's hand brushed the folder instinctively. And then, like a shadow slipping into the room, the Don appeared, calm, controlled, unshakable. No threat, no warmth. Just certainty. A bond had formed, unspoken, impossible to break. Protection came at a price. Independence was surrendered in fragments. Loyalty demanded moral compromise and willingness to face wars with no clean exit. Partnership carried burdens older than life itself. Luca understood now. Stepping away wasn't an option. It would be fatal. Over the following days, tension sharpened like a knife. Rivals tested boundaries, probing for weakness. Federal agents lingered in plain sight, asking questions that felt rehearsed, observing patterns, analyzing movements. Inside the Don's own network, whispers grew. Some questioned the value of keeping a Bellini alive, labeling him a liability. Others recognized opportunity, power, influence, strategic advantage, and plotted accordingly. Everywhere, Luca saw threats. Faces that lingered too long, vehicles that appeared twice when once should have been enough, eyes that watched, calculated, measured. His pulse was no longer just fear. It was knowledge, anticipation, vigilance. Each morning was a battlefield. Every choice, a test of loyalty, courage, and wit. Then, the inevitable message arrived. Encrypted, urgent, impossible to ignore. Luca opened it, and the words froze him. They know about you. The files were never meant to leave the shadows. You've been marked. The screen glowed dimly in the darkened room, illuminating a face hardened by fire and necessity. The Don's protection was real, but even the Don could not shield him from everything. Luca clenched the phone, jaw tight. Somewhere, beyond the city's endless noise, new players moved. New threats were already being plotted, already in motion. Survival had been bought for now. But the cost had only just begun. He realized the truth fully, painfully. In this world, debts were inherited, loyalty was bought with blood, and the Dawn's shadow could cover only so much. Tomorrow, he would move through streets where every shadow was alive, where betrayal was always a heartbeat away, and where moral compromise was a prerequisite for living. And yet, he also knew something else. He had survived the fire, he had acted decisively, and he had earned his place in the machinery of power. The city outside hummed quietly, indifferent to lives spent in its shadows, to deals struck in smoke-filled rooms, to bullets that cut the night. And as Luca looked out over the rain-slicked streets, he understood that survival wasn't victory. It was merely the beginning of a war without end. Somewhere in the darkness, a whisper moved through the alleys. A shadow shifted in a forgotten corner. The story was far from over, and Luca Bellini, marked, hunted, and hardened, would be at the center of it all. Because in the Dawn's world, there were no guarantees, only choices. And every choice came with a price. The city never truly slept. Even in the quiet hours, it whispered secrets, hid movements, and carried the weight of debts yet unpaid. From the rooftop of the safe house, Luca could see the lights of Manhattan stretching endlessly, a web of neon veins pulsing through the night. Every glint, every shadow, every movement in the distance felt alive, watching, waiting. His phone buzzed again. Another encrypted message, this one shorter, sharper. Tonight was only the first strike. They're coming. And next time, they won't hold back. Luca's hand tightened around the device. His pulse quickened, not fear, not yet, but anticipation. The stakes had shifted. He was no longer just surviving for himself. He was a weapon, a pawn, a calculated threat in a game older than he could comprehend. The Dawn had gone back into the city's veins, orchestrating unseen, commanding loyalty, punishing betrayal. Luca knew this. The man's shadow stretched farther than any street, office, or alley. And yet, even the Dawn's reach had limits. Outside the radius of his control, chaos brewed, and Luca had become its center. A siren wailed in the distance, slicing through the night. From somewhere across the water, the hum of engines approached, too precise to be random. Rival families were mobilizing. Federal eyes were watching. And somewhere, hidden, someone had already decided Luca's life would make the perfect leverage. He moved to the window, scanning the streets below. A figure slipped between pools of light, quick, calculated, almost ghost-like. Not a random pedestrian. Not yet. Someone had come with purpose, and Luca knew instinctively. The real game had begun. A brief flash of metal caught his eye, a glint of a weapon, an emblem perhaps, a signature left by someone who had been waiting. His mind raced, connecting pieces, seeing patterns the untrained I would miss. He was prepared, but prepared only for the first wave. The second, the third, the unseen, they hadn't arrived yet. Luca's gaze returned to the distant skyline, thinking of the Dawn's words, the fire at the docks, the chaos, the choices, the lives that had already been exchanged as currency. Protection wasn't safety. Loyalty wasn't shield. Every breath, every step, every shadow was a negotiation with death, betrayal, and power. And then he understood something deeper, something visceral. Survival was no longer enough. To move forward, to live, he would have to step fully into the darkness, into the world he had once tried to avoid, and wield the very power he had been afraid to claim. The storm of the city whispered against the glass. Somewhere far below, the first signs of the next confrontation were already in motion. Luca's jaw clenched. Every instinct he had honed over years of fear, calculation, and preparation flared to life. He would not be caught unready. Not now. Not ever. His phone buzzed once more. He didn't check it. He didn't need to. He already knew. Someone was watching. Someone was waiting. And the next move would define whether he survived or became another ghost in the Dawn's world. Lightning split the sky, illuminating his reflection in the window. Tired eyes, clenched jaw, a man standing on the precipice of his own destiny. For the first time, Luca didn't flinch. The night was far from over. The city was alive with danger, and he was no longer running. He was ready, and somewhere in the shadows, the next strike had already begun.